That said, controlling behavior, obviously it's very similar to the same thing. We have this idea that there's a set of information and kind of pushing through that at any given time. There's a popular word that's come into use. I say popular, but I just mean the New Agers like it. So, grain of salt. The word is observer. And that's that sense of observing, the sense of self. It's basically a model for the self. You are looking out of your eyes right now. You're seeing me, and I'm waving my fingers at you, and the light bounces off from those bulbs and hits my fingers and bounces into your eyes, and so you can see them moving. Similarly, the noises coming out of my mouth, you are familiar enough with these patterns so they are recognized by your brain as speech. You are receiving all of this information. So people like to use that. That doesn't satisfy this particular model simply because it doesn't really have a function there. It's really just a process. Whereas when all that information has been collated and integrated, you then get decisions. So as a model of the self, the decision maker tends to be a model I like using because of its description of function, right? You're making decisions all the time, every instant, even if that's just you're going to continue to sit here and listen to me yammer on. The decision maker, we would love, for example, to believe that all the decisions we make are based off of cool calculating logic. But that's not even remotely true. There are a lot of different forces that affect the decision maker. This is now what the outpouring of behavior. I still connect it with the other two questions because if there is a larger process, that process is the raising of consciousness, and that's question number 3. If there is a mind, then that mind is being directed towards that consciousness, and therefore is part of the same mechanism as well. The brain supplies the original blueprint. So if a rock is undergoing evolution, then a brain is also undergoing evolution, except now, of course, it's as Tim Leary describes, intelligence acting on intelligence, which also, by the way, probably accounts for the acceleration in evolution we've seen in the past 200 years since the Industrial Revolution, and even before then even. Gutenberg Press and so on and so forth. Behavior, however, the driving force of these behaviors is described in the idea of that process which raises our awareness, the idea of there exists something that we are born with that just kind of controls us like, in a relatively automaton sort of way, and a lot of that is biological, sure, but we have this decision maker, and that decision maker, we want it to be based off of logic, but there are all kinds of other forces. For example, a fun one I like to describe because it's overlooked and yet very popular is the force of action. This is the need to do something, right? So you're sitting in a lecture hall and you're listening to some dude talk, and after a while you are not satisfied with the information you're receiving, not just from the lecturer, even though that's where you're trying to direct your attention. Suddenly you have to move, you have to flip your pages, you have to tap your pen, you have to look around, you check your notes. Suddenly you need more action than what's going on. Your force of action, and this is can be thought of as a literal physical force like torque, or that which is created when levers are applied. The tension is created in your system to do something. Some people are born with a very elevated sense of action, and they can't even sit in a lecture hall. They need information a lot faster then they typically get it. A lot of people recognize this nowadays as ADD, but someone with attention deficit disorder, that's kind of a weird way to look at a need for information. That actually sounds like a progressive thing. That doesn't sound like a disorder. That sounds like a resource waiting to be tapped. That sounds like, people who are absorbing information so much faster than everybody else that their system actually can't handle it the way society kind of expects it to. You can turn that same tension down. I'm making a physical gesture, which the microphone cannot see. It's that of me turning down the volume of a very large radio. And you get lethargy, right? People who are very satisfied in the amount of information that they're taking. Easy example you can bring home, no matter what level of the spectrum of action, force of action that you are on, is when you wake up in the morning. If you are at one end of the information collecting spectrum and processing spectrum, you wake up groggy. Your body is so full of information that you simply cannot handle anymore. And any loud noises, any jostling, and you become very, very grouchy because your system is just not able to take anything in just at that moment. At the far end of the spectrum, the person who wakes up in the morning and jumps out of bed and has to turn everything on, turns the radio on, turns the television on, turns the computer on, pulls a newspaper out, and has a coffee.